So let's say you're into yoga or Pilates, or maybe you dabble in gymnastics like me. Either way, you know being flexible is key to doing what you love. That's why Smoothie King created this Stretch and Flex smoothie for people like us, with whole fruits and organic veggies, plus type 2 collagen. Make it part of your daily fitness routine to support flexibility and joint health. So try the Stretch and Flex smoothie in tart cherry or pineapple kale. Order online today for pickup or delivery. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to another solo edition of the Hoof Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony Romeo, and I am excited to do this show today because we've been hyping it up for a while now. People have been giving me a hard time. A lot's been put on the line. But the topic for today that I'm going to delve deeper into is why the Buffalo Bills are not, under any circumstances, picking a running back in round 1 of the 2021 NFL Draft. There's plenty for me to dive into here, and I'm going to break it down for you topic by topic, piece by piece, and we're going to start not with my own thoughts, but with that of the coach, Sean McDermott, and the GM, Brandon Beane, for our Buffalo Bills. Here's what they had to say at the end of the season. In that same press conference, Sean McDermott said, quote, when asked about the running backs, quote, "We can run the ball with who we have on this roster." Later, he also said, "We believe in who we have on this roster." And he was talking specifically there about the running back position. Pretty much a ringing endorsement for Moss and Singletary, to say the least. And remember that we played in the playoffs without Moss because he got injured and was not able to play. So Singletary was healthy, Moss didn't play, but they clearly believe in this tandem, or at least Sean McDermott does. Now let's hear what Brandon Beane had to say about the running backs. He specifically said, quote, "I think it's unfair to look at the running backs and point the blame solely on the running backs themselves. Running the football is very complex. It's the O-line, it's the tight ends, it's the receivers. If one guy doesn't make his block, the play is probably dead." So right there, he's already giving us some insight. He's basically saying, look, we've taken a look at the running plays and what happened with our running game this year, and what we've noticed is it's not just the running backs that have messed up here. Could they have done better? Sure. He's not saying they have no room for improvement or that you can't get better at running back. He's just saying there's plenty of blame to go around, and we are not solely saying that running back is a position where we definitely need to upgrade. Not only did he say that, but he went on to say, we have to run the ball when they know we're going to run the ball. We were able to do that at times against Pittsburgh. He brought up that example. And then he said, again, direct quote here, quote, "We believe in Devin, period, full stop, pause. We believe in Zach, period, full stop." What does that tell you right there? That tells you that these guys, McDermott and Beane, have full confidence in the guys on the roster at that position. Now, you can go and say that, oh, of course they're going to give a ringing endorsement to their guys. Of course they're going to say that because those are the guys they have now. But what makes you say it? In this same press conference, when asked about tight ends, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane both said, we need to get better. Brandon Beane specifically said, no one was afraid of us at the tight end position. AKA, we are going to improve our tight end position before next season. Period. Full stop. And they did already a little bit. And who knows? It's not over yet. They could still draft somebody. Brevin Jordan is one of my draft crushes. Had to fit that in somewhere here. And Sean McDermott said the same thing. We can improve at tight end. How about the offensive linemen? What their statement was on running backs certainly wasn't a ringing endorsement for the blocking of the offensive line for the running backs. They did a great job in pass protection. but they need to get better in run blocking. And sure, we brought back the 5 starters we've had, our free agents, Feliciano, but they've certainly signed a whole bunch of other guys to 1-year deals now, bringing in that depth for competition. And I don't think they're done there either. I think guard is still a position they feel they can upgrade at. And if they can bring in a guy in this draft to compete with Feliciano, nothing is guaranteed here. So the argument that, they gave a ringing endorsement to those guys just because they're on the roster holds no water whatsoever, even in this same exact press conference taking place at this same exact time. So again, that's a false argument. There's no way whatsoever that they are just saying this to say this. You've heard me say it on this podcast many times before, but for the most part, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane don't lie. They tell us straight the way they're thinking and what they want to do. Now, they're not giving anything away, so it's not like, pregame, this is what we're going to do. No, of course, they're a little bit more vague on those types of topics, but certainly when it comes to evaluating guys, they are not hiding things, especially after the fact, in this case, after the season had ended. So there's no reason to believe whatsoever that they're just, blowing hot air for the running back position. So they gave their ringing endorsement. But why would they do that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane believe in the guys that they draft. They believe in them. Look at the 2017 draft now. Those guys are re-signing. They're sticking here with McDermott. And that tells you right there that when they draft a guy, they have confidence in building them. And so who did they draft at the running back position? Well, in 2019, that was Devin Singletary in the 3rd round of the NFL draft, which is going to come in handy and key when I talk more about some of the other topics here of why the Bills aren't picking a running back this year in the 1st round. Not only did they draft Devin Singletary, who ended up having a good rookie season, averaged, 5.1 yards a carry, and probably the most impressive thing that Devin Singletary does and did in that season especially is yards after contact. He just bullies through and is able to get more yards. Now, sometimes he runs into contact, which isn't great, but, he has room to improve for sure. But certainly showing flashes of a 5.1 yard per carry season in his rookie year was something special. And then, being the guy last year coming into the season, because the year before he was not, he was looked at more as a backup and earned his role. There's something to be said about facing light boxes and all of that. Smarter people than I broke down that film. But still, Devin Singletary has talent. There's no doubt about that. He can start and play in the NFL. He's already proven that. He might not be a top 10 running back in the NFL, but he's certainly starting caliber and able to get it done. Now, to complement Singletary, in the 2020 NFL draft, the Buffalo Bills took, in the 3rd round again, one of my favorite players from last year's draft, Zack Moss. He said he was going to make people make business decisions when they were tackling him. And, of course, as a rookie, he didn't have mini camp. He didn't have the normal preseason and, came in a weird COVID season. But overall, he improved. He impressed. Was he blowing anybody away? No. But he certainly did what he had to do, especially late in some games. That game against Pittsburgh that Beane talked about, where we were able to run the ball effectively when we had a lead and run the clock out and win the game. That was a lot of Zack Moss in that game. And he had some pretty special plays before that as well. If you have not already, I highly encourage you to watch the video, the Cover One Network video that Eric Turner did on YouTube, breaking down the running back position in 2020. How did Zack Moss and Devin Singletary do in the 2020 season? Because I'll tell you one thing that impressed me was their blocking ability and their ability to protect the number 1 guy on this football team, Josh Allen. Because both of them did a stellar job in pass protection, especially Zack Moss. I was actually most impressed in that specific video, learning how smart Zack Moss was in picking up the blitz and guys rushing when Josh Allen was dropping back to pass and he was in dropping for protection. So, that was absolutely impressive. If you have not watched it, watch it. Because he points out some of these same things that I'm talking about now. The fact that the running backs we have are able to get it done. they do a good job at what their strengths are. Now, neither one of those guys is a speed demon, right? Singletary and Moss are not the fastest running backs in the NFL. They're all about Singletary more elusiveness and his ability to break away, as I said. Zack Moss, he's not necessarily a boulder forward kind of guy, but certainly break tackles and muscle and not afraid to face a guy head on to get you some extra yardage. So those are the guys we have now, or we had in 2020. And as I said, we didn't have that speed. So what does Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane do this offseason going into 2021 now? They add a guy like Matt Breida, one of the fastest players in the NFL, period, let alone at the running back position. Somebody who can return punts and kicks, obviously, but is primarily positioned at running back. And now you have a speed complement to go with Zack Moss and Devin Singletary. To me, that is the ultimate thing that they needed. Give me somebody who's a speed demon who can also catch passes, by the way. As we know, in that same video that Eric Turner made, Zack Moss, a little bit better at catching those balls, those screen plays from Josh Allen. Devin Singletary dropped a few this year, but those plays are going to be important for us. Matt Breida, very efficient pass catcher, can make the play after he catches a ball, which is super important, obviously. But he's also a speed runner. He can break away. If he makes a guy miss, he can be gone. Touchdown, right? You don't necessarily get that out of Devin Singletary and Zack Moss. Matt Breida has that kind of speed. And I love the guy. I wanted the Bills to sign him last offseason for this same reason. Be the complement to the guys we already have. They are the power backs. Bring in that speed back. Now we have that tandem. And now, look, there's no way Matt Breida, some people wanted to say, oh, Matt Breida is now the number one running back on this team. That's just insanity talking. Those people need to take a deep breath, look themselves in the mirror, watch some tape again from the 2020 season and before that, and realize that Devin Singletary and Zack Moss are the primary backs on this team, and Matt Breida is the speed supplement. He might be in there on third downs. He might be in there, for 10 touches or so a game, but he's not going to be the primary back if the other two are healthy. He's not even going to get half the touches, right? It's all about Singletary and Moss. And then you also have a guy like Antonio Williams, who's still on this roster. Spent time on the practice squad, was cut 7 times during the season and then re-signed. Finally got to show in week 17 and came out and balled. Maybe it was because he had healthy legs, but he was facing a Miami team that wanted to win. And he embarrassed them and looked damn good on the field. Very impressive. And I was a fan of him also last offseason. I was hoping he would make the roster and replace TJ Yeldon. But as we know, Sean McDermott and Beane have faith and confidence in their guys, and TJ Yeldon was one of those guys. So what happened? He stayed on the roster, and Williams had to go back and forth off of the practice squad. I'm hoping he stays on the practice squad at minimum, but he has a chance to make this opening roster as well. So there you have it. 4 guys who are legitimate running backs, a good running back team on this roster. So can we improve? Is there room for improvement? Sure. You want to bring in another running back? You want to draft a guy? Sure, go ahead and do that. But not in round 1. Not when you're already this good at the position. And here's another thing to note. Devin Singletary, drafted in 2019, is coming into his magical McDermott and Brandon Beane 3rd season. And remember, you draft a guy, you have control over him for 4 years. So he's coming into his 3rd season, and that's where a lot of these guys that they have drafted have shown their best, have reached their peak in their 3rd season. So why, all of a sudden, if we draft a running back in round 1, where does that leave Devin Singletary? You're going to trade away him? You're going to bench him? You're going to trade away Moss or bench Moss when you have him under control for 3 more years and he had a pretty impressive rookie year overall? No. You've invested in those guys. You've already said, I believe in these guys. I've drafted them. I picked them. Those are the ones I want. Now you think all of a sudden, we're going to draft a guy and suddenly he's going to be the guy and we're going to give up on Devin Singletary. No, that's not what Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott do. This is what I've been trying to emphasize all offseason now. This is not the Anthony Romeo take, right? This is not GM Anthony Romeo giving you my opinion on what the running backs are. No, I'm trying to assess and show you why this doesn't make sense for the guys who are in charge of this team. Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. The things they say, the things they've done, their track record overall. They've drafted 2 running backs who they still believe in. They brought in a guy who they think can supplement in this position. Now, there is always room for improvement, and that is what I love most about this team. Nobody's job is guaranteed. They will bring in guys to compete, and if you lose out, you lose out. Fair and square. But that does not mean you spend the capital on a first-round draft pick to bring in another running back. I'm sorry, but that makes 0 sense. It's not going to happen. Period. And again, that's not coming from me. That's Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott telling us that flat out in this press conference, in what they've done in years previous, in how they've represented their guys, in how they've built their guys from the draft, developed them, and kept them on this team. So there's my first point that I wanted to definitely get through first. It's not just my thoughts. It's Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott from their mouth. And I'll tell you what drives me nuts is all these people who don't follow the Buffalo Bills, who do their mock drafts and say, oh, the Bills need a running back, so we're going to give them this running back. What do you know about this team that you're giving us a running back in round 1? Did you forget that Josh Allen's our quarterback? Did you forget that after 20 years of primarily being a run-first team, that we are now a pass-first team for the first season in 20 years? I know that's hard for some Bills fans to remember and realize and come to terms with. But like it or not, that is going to happen next year. We are going to pass the ball about 75% of the time. Why? Because we have Josh Allen, one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, MVP candidate. Best player on this team, Josh Allen. Come on. You're not going to bring in a running back in round 1 and all of a sudden say, okay, now you can do what Devin Singletary and Zack Moss did last year and, touch the ball every once in a while when we need it, or run the ball, just to run the clock out and change a pace kind of thing. No, that's not going to happen. You're not going to spend that capital. Your upgrade using that capital is not enough. This is a past first team. We need to come to terms with that. Again, that's just going off who's on the roster. You're not going to bring in a running back who, even if the guy is a stud, you're not going to say this is worth giving you 50% of the plays now for run versus Josh Allen 50% of the plays. Absolutely not. No Bills fan should be okay with that. And again, I see that a lot coming from these guys in the media who don't follow the Buffalo Bills. But coming from Bills fans, it's like, come on, guys. You should know this team. You watch this team. You live and breathe this team like all of Bills Mafia does. You should know better than to think that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are now going to draft a running back in round 1. Even if it's, your theory is we're drafting best player available, because that's going to be one of my next points here. So let's talk about the guys in this draft who are being mocked to the Bills in the first round, at least that I've seen. Obviously, the 2 big ones here are Travis Etienne, the running back out of Clemson, and Najee Harris, the running back out of Alabama. Both great players. Both have good upside. Both are probably going to be very good running backs in the NFL. Both have pass-catching ability. They've shown that in college. They can bust out big plays. They're certainly fast, dynamic. They're my number 1 and number 2 running backs in this draft. So why not draft one of those guys in the first round? Right? And that's, again, some of these guys who don't follow the Bills, that's exactly what they have. Oh, Bills need a running back. Here's Najee Harris. He's still on the board. Let's take him. But you're not taking into account the big picture, the whole Buffalo Bills. What other positions of need do we have? What is the value of drafting somebody else over a running back in that round 1? Now, I've also seen at least one draft from CBS that I laughed at, where they had Javonte Williams, who's from North Carolina, probably the 3rd-ranked running back in this class, Now, he's a great running back too, but I don't see the Bills drafting him at all in this draft because he is Devin Singletary and Zack Moss. I could see why people are attracted to the traits of Travis Etienne and Najee Harris, but Javonte Williams makes no sense whatsoever. That missed me with that one. I'm sorry. The guy's great. Don't get me wrong. He's going to translate well to the NFL, but he doesn't make sense for him to come to Buffalo and be that guy who can upgrade either the pass catching or the running overall. Is he better than Devin Singletary? Sure, I think so. But not that much better that he would even consider drafting him in the first round. So I don't think that's a possibility either. But that's a huge point here, right? There's two guys being mocked to the Bills multiple times if they're there. So let me start with the lowest hanging fruit of why the Buffalo Bills will not draft under any circumstances a running back in round 1 of the NFL draft in 2021. And that is the very simple explanation, the simplest explanation, that both of these guys, Travis Etienne and Najee Harris, who make sense somewhat, are gone before the Bills even get a chance to pick at 30. There are other running back needy teams who also see the talent that these two guys have. So even if you're in love with these two guys, you can get on board with this explanation. I'm sorry, but they're not going to last till 30. Quite frankly, I hope they don't. Why? Because that stops the bitching and moaning from the people who do want to draft them. And it also means that a lot better talent is falling to the Bills where they are picking at 30. So who could be candidates for Travis Etienne and Najee Harris? Well, there's 4 teams that come to mind right away. And unfortunately, 2 of them are our AFC East rivals, the Jets and the Dolphins. Those 2 can take them right away. You know, they have both have picks before the Bills, and they could take them with their first or second pick. So the Jets, the Dolphins, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they could draft a running back. They could want one of these guys and say, hey, you can start right now out of the gate. We're going to give you our snaps. Let's go. And the Arizona Cardinals, another team that is running back needy, could go running back. I expect them to go cornerback before running back to replace Patrick Peterson, but it could happen. And there are other teams. Those are just the 4 quickest ones that came to mind who have a total of 6 picks before the Bills. So it definitely could happen. Now, the Jets and the Dolphins, I would expect them to obviously use their second picks in the first round for one of these guys. And I think that's exactly where they could fall. So running back in the first round, it's a possibility, just not for the Bills, especially with these guys, especially with the teams picking ahead of them. Now, you might say, okay, so if you think that they're going to be drafted that high, why not trade up? Trade up for a running back. Now, this one irritates me a lot because people who think about trading up for a running back just haven't been paying attention in the NFL recently. Obviously, the running back has been devalued in the NFL draft. This has been just a statement of fact over the last almost 10 years now overall, especially the last 5. The last running back to get drafted in the first round after a trade-up was Melvin Gordon by the Rams, and that was in 2015.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast-forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh, man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
And that was in the first round. And if you want to go before that, because I said maybe 10 years, in 2012, the Browns traded up for Trent Richardson in the first round. Doug Martin was traded up for in the first round by Tampa Bay. Mark Ingram in 2011. That one worked out a little bit better at least, but was it worth a trade up in the first round for what they gave up? Ryan Matthews, Javid Best for Detroit, traded up to draft him in the first round. Those did not work out overall. So you don't see that happening anymore. It has not happened since 2015. And certainly there have been some awesome running backs drafted since then, right? In the first round alone, you know, there are running backs to be had. You know, I'm not going to debate the Saquon Barkley, right, being drafted he might have been drafted a little too high for some people, but drafted in the first round, certainly he's a first-round talent. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, but yeah. But in that same draft, the only other running back drafted in the first round was Rashad Penny by the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, that's a huge flop. Talk about setting your organization back. That stopped them from getting to a Super Bowl, if you ask most people. That was a bad pick. Josh Jacobs in 2019, taken in the first round. Certainly a first-round talent. Certainly one of the best running backs in the NFL right now. Totally worth it, but he was the only one picked, and he was picked at 24 overall, which is right around where I'm saying Najee Harris and Travis Etienne could be picked. And in 2020, as we remember, the only running back picked in the first round was at the very end of the first round, Clyde Edwards-Helaire by the Chiefs. And how did that work out for him? He did okay. He had a few flashes and good games, but did he carry them? Did he pick their team up? Did he bring them the next step? No. In general, a running back doesn't do that for you. Look at other running backs drafted in the first round. I mean, you can go back all the way to 2017. Christian McCaffrey, certainly a first-round talent. But you know who was drafted ahead of him? Leonard Fournette. And I'm not saying Leonard Fournette turned out to be a bad draft pick. He was pretty good for that team. At one point, he was one of the best running backs in the NFL. But he didn't last that long, and he certainly didn't carry that team anywhere beyond where they were going to go. Great pick. Sure. Good. In terms of his talent, he lived up to that. But come on. These guys are the ones being picked in the first round, and to me, it tells you that the first round is not the place to pick the running backs. And now we'll go to the second round, because what I'm saying only applies to the first round. If the Bills love Najee Harris and Travis Etienne, and they're both still on the board, guess what? Trade back, which is one thing that I've been a proponent of all along. Trade back. Get a top second round pick from one of the 9 teams ahead of you there, right? One of those top 9 teams drafting in the second round. And you could probably pick up one of those guys if you love them that much. I still do not see a path for the Bills to do that. I still would not understand if the Bills did that. But it's not completely out of the question, as 100% guaranteed for not drafting one in round 1 is. So after Clyde Edwards-Helaire was drafted in 2020, these are the guys who were drafted in the second round. DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Dillon. All drafted in the second round. All quality NFL running backs. At least they look the part, right? They've only been in the league 1 year. We don't know what they're going to be. But certainly that second round seems to have been a hot spot for running backs in that draft. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, not the best of that bunch for being drafted in the first round. Granted, it was with the last pick of the first round. I'm pretty sure Kansas City, if they had a redo, would want to pick one of those other guys. Jonathan Taylor, probably the best of the bunch. Even DeAndre Swift, from what he saw. He was in a rotation there with the Lions, but he's the primary guy this year, so we'll be able to see if he's able to take that next step now. So these, again, the second round, the third round even in some of these drafts. So let's bring it back a little further. 2019, Miles Sanders was taken. David Montgomery was taken in the third round. Devin Singletary, obviously, in that draft. 2018, you had Sony Michel. I missed him. He was also taken in the first round by the Patriots. And, you could say, well, that kind of worked out. He was, committee. They do their thing. He played his part. But certainly a first-round talent? No, Sony Michel should not have been picked in the first round, especially when in the second round, Nick Chubb was picked. Like, come on. You think he's better than Nick Chubb? No. It's just that second round is probably where you can value these top running backs and get the best talent. So that's one of my other peers of arguments for this. So you have the takes of Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and what they've done. That is peer number one. The second big picture peer here is that these two running backs could be gone before the Bills even pick. There's plenty of teams that could pick them. And that the NFL has completely devalued the running back position in the second round seems to be the hot spot to pick these top running backs who can still contribute the way you want them to contribute, especially in recent years. And for me, that's where the NFL is headed. These last few years tell us much more than, what happened 20 years ago. And we all know the Bills were in a rut when we were drafting running back after running back after running back in the top rounds. So let Josh Allen do his thing. Let's keep passing the ball. That's going to bring me to my third and final tier here. And that is that there is way too much other talent in this draft, especially in this first round, at every other position where the Bills can upgrade. There is no way you can value a running back over some of these guys that could be available. Friend of the podcast, Bruce Nolan, does an excellent job breaking this down, and I highly encourage you to go check his episodes out where he talks about the running back value and had that debate with the guys over at Rumblings about picking a running back in the first round. Because I am 100% on board with Bruce's explanation. It's all a value proposition. He likes to say everything in life is a value proposition. Specifically here, this is obviously a value proposition in the draft. How much do you get out of drafting a running back versus how much you would get if you draft an edge, a cornerback, an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, an interior defensive lineman, a tight end? All positions that the Bills could use an upgrade at this year, right? Nobody's going to argue with that. You can include running back in there, but not in the first round. And I'm going to tell you why right now. Let's look at edge, for example. You're telling me you're going to draft a running back, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris. How much do they improve our team? 10% at the running back position? 50%? Whatever value you want to put it. You're telling me Kwity Paye doesn't increase your value more? Doesn't make your defense that much better than one of those running backs would make your offense? Value proposition? No, Kwity Paye, right? All the way. And it's just one of the edge guys. He might be gone. He might be long gone, but he's been falling to the Bills in recent mock drafts. Gregory Rousseau, another guy who people have mocked to the Bills. Azeez Ojulari, edge player for the Bills. One of my favorite players in this draft, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. JOK, let's bring him in. You're telling me you'd rather have a running back when we've already got quality running backs on this team? They might not be as good as one of these top two guys, but you're telling me you wouldn't want Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on the field to cover tight ends for you versus having a running back who might touch the ball an extra 10 times a game? No, I would take those guys all day. And that's just one position. What about cornerback? Another one of my favorite positions for this first round. What if Caleb Farley falls because of his injury? You're telling me the Bills, having the luxury that they do to pick a guy like that in this first round to try and maximize his talent and get the most out of him because we are in a Super Bowl window? You're telling me you wouldn't take Caleb Farley, one of the best cornerback talents in this draft, bar none? The thing with Farley is he's either a yes or a no straight up. If you say yes, we're willing to take that risk, you have him as a top 10 player in this draft. But if you say no straight up, you're not picking him because of his injury history. Okay, so maybe not Farley. What about Stokes? He's another guy we've seen. Newsome, a guy I love. If Newsome's on the board, I want to take him there. J.C. Horn, another cornerback. Some of these guys are going to be picked ahead, right? They're not going to be on the board. But if one of these guys is on the board, I'm picking each one of these guys over a running back. The value proposition is there. What they bring to this team, upgrading that CB2 spot, will make this team overall better than grabbing a running back who is also a playmaker on offense. It's that simple. Value proposition all the way. Okay, so let's move on. What about O-line? My favorite O-lineman, Elijah Vera Tucker. Some people have him falling to the Bills. I think Mel Kiper in his recent mock draft, it has the Bills picking Elijah Vera Tucker. Abso-freaking-lutely if he's there. Abso-freaking-lutely give me Elijah Vera Tucker. That is an immediate upgrade. He immediately, to me, is going to push for a starting guard spot. Probably John Feliciano's. Who knows? But he's definitely coming in and making his presence known. Dickerson, Cosme, maybe even Wyatt Davis. At this position, offensive lineman, it's all about who's gone ahead and who's still on the board and how much you value that player. How much do they increase a guard who can block in pass protection and in the run game? That's definitely an upgrade that they're looking for, as I started with the quotes from Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. Right? These are the guys. And you'll notice that I included some tackles in there too, because Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane aren't afraid to draft a tackle and have him play guard. They like that versatility. And certainly that translates well to the NFL, right? Taking a guy who's used to having an open side and putting him at guard, where now he has a guy on each of his sides, that translates pretty well usually. Because now you have some protection where you're used to not having that. So you have maybe a little more skill to move inside. Harder to move outside, right? Where now you have that open. I'm no X's and O's, guys, but that's a pretty simple explanation for you. So I like a tackle there because I think that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are thinking the same thing. Depth, competition, versatility. Let's bring in the guys we think can play these positions. Here's another position that I mentioned, wide receiver. Kadarius Toney. What if he's on the board? Certainly a playmaker for the Bills. Certainly could come in and be the return guy and be an upgrade even over Isaiah McKenzie. As much as we love Isaiah McKenzie, if we draft Kadarius Toney, it kind of puts the writing on the wall for a guy like McKenzie. What about another wide receiver who I'm becoming high on and is becoming one of my most undervalued players in this draft, Terrence Marshall Jr.? I think he is an excellent fit for the Buffalo Bills. And I think he could be a long-term answer for the Bills at their wide receiver 2 position going forward, because we don't like to see wide receiver as a position in need right now, but certainly going forward, it is going to be a position of need. And I love Terrence Marshall Jr. Please, Buffalo, I would love to draft him, but it's going to be hard to pick a wide receiver when a guy like Elijah Vera Tucker or Caleb Farley or Kwity Paye are also on the board. So it's all about how the board falls on draft night. I'm just giving you multiple examples of why a running back just does not make sense and absolutely is not going to happen in round 1 of this draft for the Buffalo Bills. It makes no sense. An interior defensive lineman, Barrymore, who's picked right around this spot in every mock draft I've seen, you'd certainly be an upgrade for the Bills. Certainly would be a position where the Bills might be looking at to get the best interior defensive lineman in this draft. So you have multiple guys that I've listed that I like, that I think the Bills will value much higher than they could value any playmaking running back. Whether you think they need to get somebody for Josh Allen in terms of offensive lineman upgrade, or a wide receiver who is a game changer, or you think, I didn't even mention Bateman could still be there. Elijah Moore, another guy who's kind of like in the Toney role, that's been mocked to the Bills a lot. Tell me you want a playmaker for this offense. Okay, pick one of those guys. They're going to give you more value than a running back will. So this, their playmaker argument doesn't fit for those guys. And even, like I said earlier, if Travis Etienne and Najee Harris are still on the board, which they very well could be, then you trade back into the second round. You trade down from that 30 pick. You go into the second round and you pick them where they belong. And to me, that's exactly where these guys belong, at the top of the second round, similar to what has happened in 2019 and 2018, where these quality running backs are available right there in that second round, not first-round talents, because other positions are valued more, not just by the Buffalo Bills, but overall in the NFL. Offensive line, cornerback, wide receiver, these obviously quarterback, but that's not one we're discussing this offseason. Those are positions that are going to go in the first round every single year, no matter what. No matter who you are, if you're the best cornerback in the draft, even if you would have been the 10th the year before, you're getting drafted in the first round, no matter what, because you're the best at that position. And it's a quality position in the NFL. Running back, not so much the case. And so I'll end with this last point here. The running back position, guys who are available in this draft, after the two we've talked about, Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. I mentioned Javonte Williams too, I guess. But there are a lot of other guys who, if the Bills really do want to take a running back this year, I think there are plenty of options past those first 2 picks, past doing something at 30, which is not going to happen, or early in the second round even. Guys like Kenneth Gainwell from Memphis, Trey Sermon from Ohio State, Jamar Jefferson from Oregon State. right? These are guys that are big-time players who are going to contribute on the teams that they are drafted. At least two of them are probably going to be as good statistically as Travis Etienne and Najee Harris. If they get drafted to the right situation and get the touches, running back is one that can translate immediately. That doesn't mean you're getting an upgrade immediately. Devin Singletary and Zack Moss are already good running backs. Teams that have no running back or bad running backs could use some of these guys and insert them right away and see a 90% increase. The Bills aren't going to get that at this position. It's just not going to happen. It does not make sense. There is plenty of talent in this draft. And I didn't even mention the prospect out of Buffalo, Jarrett Patterson, who I think is another guy who's going to translate well to the NFL, who's projected in some people not even to get drafted. I think if he goes anywhere less than the third or fourth round, it's a shame. The guy has done everything right. What, just because he's in Buffalo, you think he's not going to translate to the NFL? The guy has all the skills. I think he's going to be an awesome player at the next level. And he's not even on the top 10 for running backs in this draft. So my point is, there is lots of value at this position where taking it in the first round makes zero sense. The fall off at other positions like cornerback and edge and interior offensive lineman is quicker than that. You're not going to be able to get a late round guy like that who's going to plug and play the way an edge or a cornerback or a offensive lineman in the first and second round will. So give me those guys, those positions of need first. Address what will help this team the most first. And for me, that is edge and cornerback and interior offensive line, maybe even wide receiver, depending on how the board falls and if the Bills are not able to trade back. And if they are able to trade back, those are still the positions I want to take before I take a running back. I am actually pro trade back. Give me the best available edge player and cornerback in round 2. Give me 3 picks in round 2. Give me 2 picks in round 2 and 2 picks in round 3 and get the best guys at those positions. So we'll see how it ends up working out. But I'm telling you now, and I've said it all offseason, there is zero chance. It is not happening. The Buffalo Bills are not, under any circumstances, picking a running back in round 1 of the 2021 NFL Draft. And yes, on the Hoof Podcast, for those of you who have been tuning in to the Hoof Live, our good buddy Sterling, my co-host, who is pro running back, got me to say on one of the episodes that I will get a tattoo if the Bills pick a running back in the first round. And I even said I'll get Travis Etienne's face on my body if they end up picking him. That's how confident I am that they will not pick a running back in the first round this year. It is not happening, folks. And hopefully with this entire breakdown, this episode, I've now made my point and my data and where I've gotten my conclusion from, why I make such a bold statement like that. And like I said, it's not coming from me. It's coming from Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. It's coming from the history of the NFL over the last few years. It's coming from the guys, the talent who are available in this draft in positions of need that could upgrade the Bills in a value proposition more now than they can later. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Don't forget to tune in for the Hoof Live every Tuesday this week. We got another great episode coming for you. We've been prepping you for the draft slowly but surely, and it's been a lot of fun. Eric, Sterling, and I will be there again on Tuesday to break it all down for you, gearing up for the draft. The week of the draft, we're going to do a mock draft episode on the live show where we go through and play the part of the teams and do a whole round 1 draft. Hopefully we have some special guests for that episode to help us break it down team by team and pick by pick. And as always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to this podcast, tell a friend about us. You know, that's what we live on, word of mouth. Get the word out there. Tell people you like the Hoof. Share it on your social media. And now, whenever you see a mock draft that picks a running back, you can post this to it as a response. Say, well, I know a guy who strongly disagrees with you, and here's how he laid out his argument against picking a running back in round 1 for the Buffalo Bills. So now it's there for you. Please feel free to use it at your will. As always, Cover One Network, we've got the best coverage leading up to this draft, and we're going to be there for the NFL draft. Thursday night, we're going to go live. You'll have our real-time reactions to the picks as we gear up for that. Friday night, us Hoof guys and hopefully some of the other guys from Cover One are going to join us. We are also going to do a live show and do some reaction to the picks. So please, as always, tune in for that. Set your dials, like, subscribe so you get the notifications, turn your notifications on. And the Cover One Network in general have been killing it leading up to the draft. As always, we got a killer lineup. Eric Turner pounding out the tape. We've got Greg and Aaron on Wednesday. We've got Anthony Prohaska, the whole draft team. I mean, it's been an incredible ride preparing for this. So, as always, tune into the Cover One Network. We'll see you then. Go Bills.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.